Namaste, everybody. Lisa Romano here, the Breakthrough Life Coach. It is March 3rd, 2018. And a couple of days ago, it was my birthday. And it was also the day that my mom passed away. And I haven't slept very well last night. And I wanted to share with my YouTube audience and with those of you who follow my work about some of the things that I am struggling with as the daughter of a narcissist and the daughter of a severely codependent mom upon the death of her mother. Um, I fell asleep last night crying, you know, not because my mom is gone, but because of the dynamic between my mom and my dad that was so dysfunctional that I could do nothing about. Not even with 20 years of recovery under my belt, not even with 6 best-selling books, not even with a YouTube audience of over 100,000, not even with coaching programs, not even with meditations, not even with my webinars, my workshops. None of it could have saved my mom from this, I think, horrible death, you know. And what I hope to convey in this video is the enormous health and possibility and the ability to let go in peace, in harmony you can experience when you learn to let go of what you can't control. It's hard. It's really hard. You know, my mom passed away on my birthday, and weird story about that. 53 years ago, on the day that I was born, my mom died giving birth to me. And she remembers being sucked down a tunnel, and she remembers being stopped by this hand. And she recognized the hand because the hand had a mole on it. And she knew it was her father's hand, who had just passed away 5 months earlier. Very interesting. And she said, like she was so happy to see her dad's hand and she just wanted to stay. My mom was only 19 when she gave birth to me. And she remembers her father's voice saying, "No, you have to go back. We're not ready for you yet." And so while I was whispering in my mother's ear, while I was saying goodbye, I told her that heaven was probably ready for her now and that it was okay to go. You might hear Tori and Alice snoring in the back. They're sleeping. My whole house is sleeping but me. But so I said goodbye to my mom, knowing that she was going to die on my birthday and knowing that she didn't want to expire in front of me and my brother and my sister. And about 20 minutes later, we got the phone call that she actually passed away. And I felt free. And I think it's because her pain was over. I cannot stress enough how debilitating and how cancer-like codependency is. If you are codependent, you must challenge your thoughts. You must challenge your beliefs. You must. If you don't, your life will unfold quite tragically. I guess it depends, on the severity of it. Lots of things could happen. You could be mildly codependent and, live in a marriage that is not the best, but it's okay. You could be married to another codependent who isn't particularly abusive and severely narcissistic, like my dad, for instance. And you can get through life and it'll be okay. But you'll never live. Not really. My mom died paralyzed. She was cognitively paralyzed. She was, in so many ways, emotionally paralyzed. And you know what? If she was standing over my shoulder, she'd say, "No, I wasn't." She would. Because my mother had an uncanny ability to make everything okay. And that's what severely severely codependent people do. My father was and is a malignant narcissist. My father is calculating. He's a thief. He steals when he can. He'll lie. He will cry to get you to take care of him. And if you do not give in to him, he will discard you. I watched him throughout my whole life poke fun at my mother's weight, say things about her sexually in front of me and my brother and my sister, put her down. He controlled the money. He could go gamble whenever he wanted. You know, he could buy what he wanted, but he controlled every dollar my mother spent. And she acquiesced to him. Whatever he said, she did. When I had a hysterectomy back 8 years ago, I actually died. And I bled out. I needed 6 transfusions of blood. I had to be revived. I was put in a coma. I was on a ventilator. And my father wouldn't come visit me because he had a dentist appointment the following week. And in his head, it didn't make sense to come to Queens twice in 2 weeks. That's my father. But when my father collapses, he expects the world to stop and to be there for him. My mother had dementia, and she was getting worse and worse, and she had strokes, and the strokes just made everything worse. And on Mother's Day of last year, my father screamed at my mother and actually called her a fucking asshole because she had an accident in her pants. And I heard him say that. And I was 3 or 4 hours away, and there was nothing that I could do. And I needed my sister and my brother on board to basically take custody over my mom from my father. But unfortunately, we never got to that point. In the past few months, my mother's health has been declining, and my father has had very little to no patience for her, and wouldn't pay to have her stay in a facility, even though he has the money. He wouldn't pay to have nursing care in the house, proper nursing care. He paid to have someone come in a couple hours, but she wasn't a nurse. Last week, my mother was vomiting. She didn't go to the hospital. My dad just kept crushing up the pills and trying to give them to her. She was in renal failure, and her body was becoming toxic. And according to my sister, very weak, she was hallucinating, which were all signs of renal failure. And instead of my father having compassion for her, he got irritated with her, and he would yell at her, and he would suggest that she was being obstinate. Now, dear ones, that is the way a narcissist justifies and rationalizes cruel behavior of the helpless. They have to tell themselves a story that justifies their anger and justifies their lack of compassion for the people who are helpless. Because you're not allowed to be helpless. Only a narcissist is allowed to be helpless. You're not allowed to have needs. Only a narcissist is allowed to have needs. You are not allowed to have emotional outbursts. Only a narcissist is allowed to have emotional outbursts. While we were saying goodbye to my mom in the hospital this week, my dad was outside in the hallway with Anthony. And on the ride home, Anthony told me that my father said, after a while, you just lose compassion for people like this. I just got no more compassion for her. Basically, trying to rationalize and excuse his non-compassion for this helpless stroke, dementia victim who was in renal failure. He'll have to live with that. He'll have to live with that. And so what I'm hoping that you guys understand is that we have to heal from codependency. And if you've had a narcissistic father like I have, a codependent mom like I have, and make no mistake, I have no regrets about writing the road back to me and talking very candidly about how abusive my mother was to me. She was. Just because she's passed away, and just because I see it very clearly now, I understand that she was very immature when she gave birth to me. She was angry because my father was the way he was, and she felt like she was stuck. And she was full of anxiety. My father was the way he was. He wasn't showing up for her. Her father just passed away. And now she had this infant that needed her attention, that cried a lot. And I cried because my house was so toxic, and she had a very difficult time soothing me. She couldn't soothe me. That wasn't my fault. And it wasn't my fault that my mother took all her stress and anxiety out on me. I was her first. That wasn't my fault. And so, just because I've been in recovery for this many years and I understand the dynamic, and just because I have compassion for my mother's reality now, that doesn't excuse and that doesn't throw out the way she was towards me while I was growing up and I needed her. I had to pin the tail on the donkey for a while. I had to get comfortable saying, hey, this is what happened and this is what you did to me. And for those of you who struggle with, identifying and acknowledging that your family wasn't perfect, it's tough to acknowledge that, but you have to. For those of you who know the story of Christ, remember, I'm not religious. I'm very spiritual. I believe in a creator. I don't even like the word God. I believe in a creator and I believe in source. I believe in creation and I believe in life and I believe in love and I believe in abundance. I believe we're all an extension of that, but many of us don't believe that, and we believe that we lack. And so we only see lack in ourselves, and when you only see lack in yourself, you can only see lack in the world. That's what I believe. And so these days I choose to see abundance in myself and abundance in the world, no matter what, which took me a while to get here. But I had to identify what was wrong. And identifying having a codependent and a narcissistic mother and father helped me detach and helped me heal the shame and helped me realize that it wasn't me. All of these negative feelings that I felt were given to me. They were the byproduct of a very sick dynamic, a byproduct of being the adult child of an alcoholic. Both my parents were adult children of alcoholics. And so everything that I felt, all the guilt and all the shame and all the not enoughness, that wasn't my fault. That is not of Creator. We have come here to know that we are enough. We're supposed to hold our hands out and say, I want it all. The world is your playpen. But if all you see is tragedy and doom and gloom, then that's all you will attract. It took me a while to get here. And now I've committed my life to helping people wake up. And if you've coached with me, if you follow my work long enough, you'll eventually hear me say that part of the fire that's under my ass is the idea that I couldn't save my mother. But maybe, just maybe, a meditation, a YouTube video, a workshop, an Instagram post on Facebook, a conversation that you see me have with someone else on Facebook. Maybe that can save you. Maybe that'll be enough for you to wake up and say, wait a minute, what do you mean it's not me, it's my programming? What do you mean? And for those of you who know the story of Christ, remember, even Christ on the cross cried out and said, Father, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken? This is Christ. This is the guy that we have been told is the Son of God and knows he's the Son of God. And even he, in his hour and moment of great, great pain, where people, were persecuting him, people that he loved, his family. Remember, Christ was a Jew and the Jews killed him. So to me, that's symbolic of those of us who have our own family hurting us. And that's Alice. That's symbolic of us, I think. So many of us are wounded by the people that we love, people who share our blood. That's what hurts the most. It hurts a lot more when your father abandons you or rejects you, or your narcissistic father discards you, than it does when a neighbor gives you the bird. Of course, it hurts more when it's your own family. Absolutely. But even Christ asks, where the hell are you? Why have you abandoned me? And so, for those of you who are struggling on the healing path with this idea of pointing the finger and understanding what has happened to you in your life, as someone who's been there and considers herself pretty far along on the recovery path, it's necessary. We don't stay there. You know, I'm at a point in my life where I can understand what happened and I can identify my father as a narcissist. And I can go gray rock, or I can go no contact, or I can be around him and non reactive and non resistant. I can hold on to myself. I can acknowledge him and not be pulled into his dynamic. I'm so grateful for that. And I can let go. I don't blame my mother for what's happened. I see the big picture. My mother and I, over the years, developed a sense of respect. And that was only after I had a showdown with her and I looked her right in the eye and said, I'm not 12 anymore. You don't get to push me around. I'm going through my divorce and you're crapping all over me. You're being passive aggressive. If a girl ever needed her mother, it was now. Move over, get out of my way. I'm leaving. And it took about a year of no contact, and then slowly, my mom started to come around, and our relationship was completely different. But that's because I changed. I no longer saw my mom as my mom. I was no longer that little chick that was looking up at her hen. Are you my mother? Are you my mother? Begging her to see me. It was done. It was done. I saw myself, and I knew that I deserved better. And I wasn't going to tolerate anybody being in my life that couldn't respect me, not even my mother. And on that day, I began to see my mother as a person, as another woman, not as my mother. And that is when I was able to develop self-respect. And that is when I was able to hold on to myself even more. And that is when my entire world began to shift. Because once I confronted my mother, I was able to really confront my ex-husband because they were so similar. And I was able to let go and know that there was no rescue boat coming, like Melody Beattie says in Codependent No More. I love that line. There is no rescue boat coming. So true. We have to rescue ourselves. And so I'm grieving, but I want you guys to know that I'm okay and that I'm getting through it by using my 1, 2, 3 process, that I am just accepting what I can't control. I'm getting a bus, and my father refuses to have my mother buried in Queens, which means that all of her friends and all of her loved ones have to travel 4 hours there for a 3-hour wake. My father is refusing to have my mom have a funeral at a church because he doesn't believe in that stuff. Even though my mother was the holiest of rollers, it's all about my dad. My father is cremating my mother, even though she never wanted to be cremated. So I can tell you that there's a lot of stuff that I can't control right now. There's a lot of stuff that I think I have a right to be angry about. But I know that I can't control this stuff. He's in charge. And I have to let that go. And I have to control what I can. So what I've decided to do was get a bus, and I'm taking my mother's closest friends and closest family members to Pennsylvania on Tuesday. And I will pack a breakfast for them, and they will all get a goodie bag. The bus has a bathroom on it. So these people who are in their 60s and 70s will have a place where they can talk about my mom. My brother's family and my family will be able to console one another, and we will show up at this funeral home, the people that love my mom the most, and we'll get off that bus, and we'll go in there, and we'll tell stories about my mom, and we'll toast my mom. And then after that, I'm taking my mother's closest family and friends out to dinner because my father had no intentions of doing that. So he was willing to have people drive 4 hours for a 3-hour wake and then send them home. Just send them home. That's my dad. But I can't control that. But what I can control is I can make an executive decision and decide to make it as comfortable as possible for my mother's closest family and friends, outside of my father's control. And that is the way I am moving through this very difficult time in my life. For those of you who follow my work, who have taken part in my programs, this is all about the 1, 2, 3 process: accepting how you feel, feeling what you feel, deciding how you want to feel, deciding what you want to do about how you feel. The 3 subsets are: what can I control? What can't I control? And ultimately, how do I want to feel? Ultimately, how I want to feel before my dad has my mom cremated is that she was surrounded by love, and that there was an opportunity for all the people who loved her to be there with her before we said our final goodbye. And that's what I've done. And for that, I'm grateful that I have that ability to do that. And so, dear ones, focus on what you can control, not on what you can't. Be willing to let go, especially when there's a choice there to be angry. I have a choice to be angry. I'm not choosing that choice. I'm going to choose love. And I hope that you do too. So thank you for being a part of this amazing community. We are over 100,000 strong. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. I am committed to helping people heal from codependency and narcissistic abuse, because I believe that it is a dark energy and a shadow that is a part of our world, and it doesn't have to be. I couldn't save my mom, but hopefully this video has helped awaken some of you. And if it has, I'm blessed, and everything that I've been through has been worth it. So from my heart to yours, from my home to yours, namaste, and I bow to the love and the light that is absolutely in you.